Good morning, and welcome to today's Fireside Chat on AI governance, a conversation with Miriam Vogel, President and CEO of EqualAI, and the chair of the National AI Advisory Committee. Today's conversation is a production from the Presidential Task Force on Law and Artificial Intelligence here at the American Bar Association. The views of today's speakers may not represent those of the ABA and have not been approved by the House of Delegates or the Board of Governors. We will have the question and answer function turned on today. Please feel free to post any questions you may have in the chat. Questions may be answered live if time allows. We will be on here for about 30 minutes today. And there may be additional materials available once the video is posted to the ABA Task Force website. As always, all our prior events are available on the ABA Task Force website, so we encourage you to check those out as well. Hosting today's conversation is Vice Chair of the Task Force, Cynthia Swick. Cynthia is a partner of 20 years at Jones Day and Latham Watkins, where she represented clients in high-profile matters involving complex science and technology issues. Cynthia also has been a fellow with Stanford University's Distinguished Career Institute program, where she focused on cutting-edge technology, including artificial intelligence, and as the former chair of the ABA section of Science and Technology Law. She's co-authored the American Association for Advancement of Science report, Artificial Intelligence, Trustworthiness and Litigation. Cynthia, good morning.
Good morning, Joey. Thank you so much for your kind introduction and welcome everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce this morning our very distinguished guest, Miriam Vogel. She is one of the nation's leading experts on AI governance. And she's been focusing on AI governance for several years. She serves as president and CEO of EqualAI, which is a nonprofit created to reduce unconscious bias and other harms from AI and promote responsible AI governance. She serves as chair of the National AI Advisory Committee, or NAIAC, which was mandated by Congress to advise the president and the White House on AI policy. And we're very fortunate that she serves as a special advisor to the ABA Presidential Task Force on Law and AI. She co-hosts a podcast, In AI We Trust, with the World Economic Forum. She taught technology law and policy at Georgetown University Law Center, and she has served as chair of the alumni board. And she's also a special advisor to the Center for Democracy and Technology. And she has served in the U.S. government leadership positions, including in 3 different branches of federal government. Most recently, she served as Associate Deputy Attorney General, where she advised the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General on a broad range of legal, policy, and operational issues. She also served in the White House in 2 administrations, most recently as the Acting Director of Justice and Regulatory Affairs. She was Associate General Counsel at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and practiced law at Sheppard Mullin in Los Angeles. So welcome, Miriam. We're thrilled to have you here this morning.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you.
You have been focusing on AI governance for several years, including through your work as president and CEO of EqualAI. Can you tell us about your work in AI governance, including through EqualAI, and how you became interested in working in this area?
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure. So about 5.5 years ago, we started talking about AI that is safe and inclusive and efficient. And as you might imagine, it was a taller lift at that point to convince people that this is a conversation they needed to participate in, particularly lawyers, because very few of us trained in artificial intelligence and did not think it was our area of specialty. I am here to say today, it actually is within almost all of our areas of specialty going forward, at least in some small part. So as we started to look at how AI was influencing our lives, even then, in so many important ways, we realized that too few people understood that AI is flawed. It is biased. It has challenges that we can certainly overcome, but we need to be intentional. And lawyers in particular play a key role in reducing these harms because we're talking about historic discrimination, historic biases that are now being embedded in this technology. I think it's something we came to see as AI is a reflection of our humanity. And so if we look at it with that approach, as opposed to too many people who have an implicit bias that AI is computer science, it's scientific, it's accurate, it's trustworthy as is, that's really a misnomer. And we also needed to breach the misunderstanding that this was not something that we were all prepared to deal with as lawyers, because we are able to advise our clients in the airlines industry and the car industry, and yet we probably could not build or operate, most of us, a aircraft or build a car ourselves. We know how to put in frameworks that create safety and build trust. And we started to see more and more with our work with EqualAI that was exactly what we need to do in the AI space. We were concerned not enough people are prepared given how pervasive AI was becoming. And so we started looking at what does it mean to govern AI appropriately. We took a lot of examples from others who have led in this space in other areas where we have seen strong leadership from lawyers and policymakers, like in cybersecurity and in privacy, where we see so much overlap to the lessons, both in substance and in models of frameworks and best practices in how we need to approach AI. And so for several years now, our focus has been day in, day out, making sure people understand they all have a role to play in ensuring that our AI future is one that is healthy, that is serving them, and is one that they need to participate in.
No, that's terrific. And it is very impressive to me that you were one of the earlier adopters of this view of the importance of focusing on AI governance, and in particular, how lawyers can play a very important role in these issues. I want to talk a little bit about your work with NAIAC. In April of 2022, under the administration of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, this National Artificial Intelligence Advisory Committee, or NAIAC, was convened for a 3-year term to advise the president and the White House on national AI issues. And you issued, your committee issued the year 1 report in May of 2023. And it's an 89-page report. So you obviously have a very comprehensive overview of your work during that first year. And it focused on 4 major themes: leadership in trustworthy AI, leadership in research and development, supporting the U.S. workforce and providing opportunities, and international cooperation. Can you talk with us about the key findings and recommendations outlined in that first report of NAIAC?
Absolutely, I'd be very happy to, and thank you so much for sharing this with your audience. Just for starters, I'll say everyone can find this information on ai.gov/NAIAC, which is NAIAC, the National AI Advisory Committee. All of our work is public. We have 3 public meetings at a minimum a year. We've started to have a lot more in our second year, given how much our AI work has accelerated. And if it's helpful to provide some background on what is NAIAC, for those who might not yet be familiar, it's a congressionally mandated committee. It came out of the National Defense Authorization Act, in the same bill that put forward the mandate for the NIST risk management framework and the development of the National AI Initiative Office at the White House. And so, as everyone knows, that bill had several AI mandates, and our committee was one of them. The mandate was to advise the White House and the President and the National AI Initiative Office on AI policy generally. And so they appointed experts from a broad cross-section of society, again, which was also in the congressional mandate, in order to fulfill that role and to make sure that we're doing it in as broad a perspective, incorporating in as many viewpoints as possible. And so we started out with 27 members. We've had some join the administration and change positions and that sort of thing. So we now have 25 experts across industry, academia, civil society, who are given the challenging but really important task of deciding where we can align on what we think is the most critical action that the president and the White House can take to ensure that AI meets our goals. And so obviously one of the first steps was defining what are our goals. And really within our first public meeting, which was our first meeting as a group in that May meeting, which is posted live on the website, we quickly came to agreement that when we were striving for artificial intelligence that we would support, it meant that it had to be inclusive and efficient and fair. And so a lot of our work was defining what that meant. We started the work, as you know, working with 26 experts who all have very, very busy day jobs at a time when their mandate in their day jobs with artificial intelligence was exploding. And so we wanted to make sure that we used people's time as efficiently and as focused as possible to move the needle as much as possible within our 3-year term. And the mandate also is to have a report within the first year of operation. And so that's the report you're talking about. So in order to get to that report, we divided ourselves into 5 working groups. And I should note that there is a separate subcommittee that was also mandated in the statute, and that is focused on law enforcement issues. So because that was already a separate mandate that was under construction at that time, where they report to NAIAC, but they're not NAIAC members, we wanted to preserve those critical issues impacting AI and law enforcement to their discretion and to allow them the time to form. And they kicked off last May and have been working tirelessly to fulfill their mission. And so that still left us a lot of room of critical areas that needed to be addressed. And for our first year, we made sure to target those specific areas that were mandated in the statute. So the statute is both broad and narrow. AI policy is broad, directed towards the White House and the executive branch, the president in particular. So that certainly impacted our focus to executive action. Additionally, while it talked about advice on AI policy globally, they also mentioned a few areas in particular: competition, international collaboration, workforce, and so forth. And so we had 5 working groups, each focused on 5 of the areas mentioned within the statute: so trustworthy AI, competitiveness, workforce, research and development, international collaboration. And each of the working groups prioritized among those in the working group, who again, where we tried to ensure there was a broad cross-section of perspectives in each working group, what would they say are the most timely critical issues where we wanted to see immediate action from the White House? And that is then what came to the committee. We had a February meeting last year where we met to see what the different working groups were proposing, what was missing, what we wanted to discuss further, and that became the substance of what you now see posted online in our year 1 report. As you say, it's broken into several different areas focusing on AI leadership, competition, with areas as aspirational as bringing the NAIR into existence to more targeted next steps, having a pilot for NAIR, the National AI Research Resource, thinking about on the international front, ways that we could make sure that we are able to maintain leadership and make sure that our leadership is put to best use. You'll see 2 areas in the report where we talk about the NIST risk management framework. There was broad consensus, unanimous consensus of the support for the NIST framework amongst our members. And so we really leaned into that. It's our first recommendation I should say we broke our report up into different themes, but also we had objectives, so you could very easily break down to understand the objectives we all aligned on, and there are 14 of those, as well as the 24 action items that we thought were immediate actions that the White House needed to take. So in the action items, you'll see from the get-go, talking about broad use of the NIST risk management framework, including putting it to best use within its own house, within the executive branch. Later in the report, we also talk about our advice to use this framework as a mechanism for international collaboration and working with partners abroad to make sure that these best practices that were so well thought out, discussed, and brought to life in a collaborative way were put to best use in the international space as well.
No, thank you for that. And I do want our audience to know, if they are interested, that they are able to watch your public meetings and provide public comments, correct?
Absolutely. Please provide public comments. There's the standard process for request for questions before each of our public meetings. Our next public meeting will be February 22nd. And in addition, on the website on ai.gov/NAIAC, you'll see a button to contact us, provide comments right at the top, because it's really important to us that we know what you're thinking about. We also are trying to make it very as accessible as possible. Really welcome people's thoughts on that. So one thing we do is just post on LinkedIn whenever we have a recommendation to share that we voted on and is ready for public discussion. We make sure it's posted there so people can provide feedback in that informal mechanism as well.
I wanted to ask you another question about the international side of AI. We had talked about that a little bit, and I know that NAIAC has recently addressed having emerging economies participate in a global AI summit. Could you talk with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. That was one of our first recommendations in year 2. I should clarify that after our first year report, we reconfigured our committee working groups so that we could adjust to the changing and quick-paced needs of the AI policy arena. And so we reconfigured our working groups. We maintained a few, such as workforce. We maintained international collaboration. We structured one to discuss education and awareness on AI more broadly. That had been a theme through the working groups, but we wanted to focus squarely on that because we agreed that was such a critical need, particularly as we thought about what are the ways the federal government can and should be providing the most important functions, and in particular, some that others would not. So AI awareness, is a particular area of specific focus. AI Futures was a new working group that we assembled based on various threads, looking at preparedness, opportunity, and competitiveness with AI. And we also structured a working group on safety, trust, and rights. So the question you ask about the international based recommendation, which again was our first out of the committee in our second year in operation, was really part of our theme that we wanted to make sure that AI is inclusive. It's also based in our understanding that AI is a cross-border technology. So as much as we want to make sure that the US government is prepared and clear on expectations, we're mindful of the fact that these expectations, these regulations need to have a global eye as well, a perspective towards how this operates in the wild, and that those who are creating it and consuming it will be across border. So the better alignment, the more we can have agreement across borders on what the expectations are, the easier it'll be to build machines and systems that accommodate and align with those regulations and those values. So This recommendation talked about our hope that we broaden our cooperation with other countries, and how important it is that be a part of how we develop solutions for AI across the globe. We talked about emerging economies, understanding that we need to broaden our scope on who is building AI, who's consuming AI, and so wanting to bring them to the table so that we can be realistic about who will be impacting our lives with the AI that is being built and deployed, and benefiting, making sure we're inclusive of the broader ecosystem, who can and should be heard as we have these really important conversations on the global stage.
So the first year report was completed in May of last year. So what are the goals of NAIAC for the remaining time in existence?
Yeah. Well, so for year 2, we understood that generative AI became, last May was pretty much in every conversation we were having. I don't think that was just my bubble of the universe, but it just, people were starting to understand just a glimpse at the broad power and opportunity of AI through ChatGPT, the large language models that were being released. And so that was part of why we restructured our focus. We wanted to make sure that we didn't wait for a second year report in order to provide guidance. We thought, come this April, too much of the world will have changed and we'll have missed the opportunity to use this. I am privileged to work with such deep, thoughtful experts on AI on the NAIAC committee, and we wanted to make sure to make best use of this resource that had been brought together and that was in operation. And so instead of the traditional FACA, the Federal Advisory Committee practice of one-year reports, we made opportunities to have more public meetings so that we could have more deliberations and release recommendations more routinely. So you'll see a cadence through the summer and through last year where we had at least monthly public meetings so that we could release deliberative work, that we could deliberate and as you know, a FACA requirement, and then share, entertain thoughts, invite thoughts from the broader public, as well as get those posted so that there could be broad discussion about those deliberations and those materials. We also shifted so that it was not just recommendations. As you'll see in this last year, we've issued statements like the one you just referenced. We have findings as well, which is different than a recommendation. It's based on another development that we have really leaned into with NAIAC, and that is broad public stakeholder meetings. We, in our first year, benefited so much from briefings of those who were experts in different communities from different perspectives across the globe. And we wanted to make sure to keep that part of the public discourse as much as possible. So you can see we modeled that in our second meeting after the secretary convened us in DC for our first meeting at our launch. Our second meeting was in Palo Alto, where we asked each working group to put together a stakeholder discussion based on areas they thought were priorities. So that was something we do much more routinely in year 2, starting last summer, when we invited human rights groups, civil rights groups, community leaders to come tell us about what they're seeing, what they're thinking about, what their priorities are, so we could make sure that that informed our work, so we can make sure that our audience at the White House was also aware of these broad, important perspectives, and that informed our work and our decision on what our objectives would be. And so those led to some of the findings that you'll see posted online. In our second year and in our third year going forward, we want to make sure that we are attentive to where the public is. Again, that's how we reconfigured some of our working groups, looking at AI awareness, education, thinking about how the federal government can play an important role there, and how our perspectives can help support that work. In addition, all of them are critically important. All of our workforce issues, the AI futures, they're each areas that we think are absolutely critical importance. And so making sure we stay current on, are there new issues we need to be tackling where our expertise would lend value to the White House? Are there other products or mechanism that we should be delivering that will make sure that we're timely and helpful? Really welcome people's thoughts on how we answer those questions, which, as I said, we've answered so far by thinking about our work groups in the proper format. I think we do have that, but always welcome feedback. And is there something other than findings, recommendations, and statements? Again, that's much broader than most FACAs, and grateful for our committee for being nimble and thinking about how to do that. And the stakeholder meetings, again, a really key part of our deliberations, our considerations that we'll expect to do more of, but welcome ideas on how else others think that we can make best use of this committee's time and energy.
And I would recommend that our audience do check out the website for the committee, because it does have a wealth of valuable resources. For example, with regard to generative AI, you were talking about that being an issue that the committee has focused on recently. You have issued a report on FAQs on foundation models and generative AI, which I thought was very informative. So I do encourage people listening to this to make use of the valuable resources your committee is creating. So Miriam, let me ask you if you have recommendations for legal professionals who want to stay informed and prepared regarding advances in AI, including generative AI. What recommendations do you have for our audience members on how best to do that?
Thank you for that question. I can't stress enough that this is not just a curiosity. This is our life. AI is infusing every part of our life. I'm not warning people. I'm not concerned that it will take over our lives or our profession. I think there's always going to be the need for great judgment that lawyers provide as partners in creating these innovations and in all the different ways that our clients rely on us. But I do think it's important, and even Chief Justice Roberts, as you know, mentioned in his year-end statement that AI is the latest technological frontier that we will face. So I think it's clear this is something we all need to engage in. This is not someone else's issue to navigate. This is ours, and that's okay, because just as in all the other innovations over time and in our practices, we can understand AI and how it impacts our work. I think obviously, we've learned some practices that are not well advised, such as using LLMs to write your briefs. Again, we don't want to put it in the position where it is replacing humans. It can augment our work. A first draft of an op-ed, ideation, if you're brainstorming, think about how it can make your work more efficient. But, I think being mindful that we do not want to, and we do not want our clients trying to attempt to replace humans, particularly in these critical areas of safety and legal advice. I really commend Mary Smith and you, Cynthia, and the American Bar Association for understanding how critical this issue is, creating the AI task force to help inform your work and make sure that lawyers are staying current. I know the State Bar of California and others have resources available. We at EqualAI have a continuing legal education program that we've had it's California Certified for Bias and CLE. There are many resources out there to get an understanding of what is this AI, how does it fit into our work. We have a law paper coming out at EqualAI to help answer the question, at least starting to answer the question. We're trying to find a way to make this a crowdsource project, because there's no way to answer the question in full, and it's so important to get the different perspectives. But we get asked all the time, is AI regulated today? We say strong, hard yes. The question is how, and so we really wanted to try to start to answer that question, again, hopefully in a collaborative way. But it's just so important that people understand that if you're dealing with consumer protection, intellectual property, criminal justice, due process, data privacy, even contracts, torts, and product liability, you need to be thinking about how AI can be impacting the precedent, how AI systems could be creating liability or harms in this space. It's really important. We've published articles, and I know you have. There's so many places where people can see how within the US alone, the federal agencies have really stepped up to make sure that people and organizations are clear on some of their responsibilities, obligations, liabilities. I think most of us want to avoid the liabilities. It's maybe lucrative for some lawyers down the line, but for everybody else, it means that someone's been harmed, and it means that resources are going towards addressing that harm rather than enjoying the innovation and the opportunity that AI can create for us. So make sure to take a look at what the FTC has said on this and some of the ways that they're looking at COPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, ECOA, other authorities under their purview when it comes to regulating, overseeing AI. We've seen some joint historic statements by different federal agencies within the US, so please take note of that. And they've provided really helpful resources. So the EEOC was also, like the FTC, one of the first out of the gate to talk about their perspective and their intent to look at AI as it impacts their audience. They were very clear in their announcing their initiative 3-4 years ago that they do have civil rights laws that can be impacted from your actions, whether they are recommended by humans or AI. It's the same liability no matter who, regardless of who or how this action came into place. But they've also provided very helpful resources so that you understand what it means to ensure that you're being legally compliant. So I ask everyone, please, if you have not already, look at what the EEOC has done. Look at their joint historic statements with the Department of Justice, where they do a really helpful deep dive and provide resources on, for instance, the Americans with Disability Act. So many of us have seen with facial recognition that there are harms, that facial recognition does not see all people the same way. Dark skin colors are not as well observed by facial recognition, and other flaws in its use. Likewise, voice recognition is even more flawed in terms of understanding different dialects, different languages, as most AI systems are built on English and English of a certain dialect. So if you're talking about someone with a speech impediment that's being required to use a voice recognition system, will they be heard? So at the end of the day, I would say that is the most important question that lawyers can be asking. Who is seen, who is heard, and most of all, for whom could this fail? Who's not being seen and heard by the AI use of our own systems and particularly those of our clients?
That's terrific. No, thank you so much, Miriam. We really appreciate your willingness to share your expertise with us this morning. Our time has just flown by, and our time is up. We do have one question that perhaps you could address just briefly, and then we'll conclude. A question about ISO IEC 42001 Information Technology Artificial Intelligence Management System, which was released in December of 2023. And do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm so glad it's being raised. I talk about the NIST risk management framework because they did a really important, they had a really important, useful way of bringing this into creation that we don't often see in the creation of any best practice standards, let alone by a government. It's very hard to be as collaborative and inclusive as NIST finds a way to be in their in the standards that they provide. So part of the reason we lean in so much on the NIST risk management framework is because both in substance and in how practical it is, it gives you, in addition to the framework, a user guide. So if you have questions about how you as a different type of user, as a nonprofit organization, as an end user, as opposed to an AI creator, need to use this very, very comprehensive resource, there's a user guide right there for you. In fact, on our website, I realize I'm on a tangent, but if anyone wants to make good use, we made it public, an impact assessment tool that we shared with people we work with to put it's based on the NIST risk management framework. So if you want to use one of the best practices of creating an algorithmic impact assessment on some of the AI systems you're looking at, we have this tool available for you to use, which again is based on the NIST risk management framework. So you're absolutely right. There are so many other important standards out there. I know the ABA is working on compiling them. I certainly cannot do it justice today, but wanted to make sure that one of the global standards that is really getting consensus across the globe is on everyone's radar.
No, thank you so much, Miriam. That's terrific. And this has been a fascinating discussion on some very critical issues. And thank you so much for agreeing to share your expertise and insights with us here today.
Thank you so much for your important work, Cynthia, for the work of the ABA on this critical and so many issues. And I really appreciate your having me today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Cynthia and Miriam, thank you so much for participating in this really interesting conversation. And thank you to our audience for engaging with such thoughtful and deliberate questions. The recording of today's event will be available on the ABA AI Task Force website early next week. We encourage you to share it broad and wide across your social networks. We believe that this is a very important session that we want to get into as many people's homes and screens as possible. Additionally, there are 2 upcoming events for the ABA AI Task Force that we'd like you to be aware of for the next month. On January 22nd at noon, our working group on courts and the judiciary will be holding AI and the judiciary. We'll be holding a lunch and learn entitled The Impact of Deepfakes on the Justice System. That is noon on January 22nd. And on February 3rd, anyone who will be in Louisville for the ABA annual meeting or for the National Conference of Bar Presidents, we encourage you to join our joint program with the National Conference of Bar Presidents at 9:15 on February 3rd. This closing plenary will be all about AI. It's entitled AI Crash Course for Bar Leaders and Lawyers, Uses, Misuses, and Ethics. So we encourage you to join us if you'll be in Louisville for the mid-year meeting. Thank you so much, and we will see you next month.